So, hello, Day of the Dead fans. My name is Thomas Brown, and I'm doing this at the age of 68. I'll be 69 in August. And I'm not sure why I have not posted to this group before, because Day of the Dead, like Night of the Living Dead, has been a big part of my life since my teens. I became a fan of Night of the Living Dead when I first heard about it, and didn't actually get to see it until I think I was 19 when I actually got to see it. And the reason I was a fan when I was 14 is because I thought any film that shows people eating people, I have got to see. Unfortunately, I did not get to see it. It did not play anywhere near me when I was growing up, and my parents, who were basically indoctrinated into the world that all horror films are evil and wrong. It did not allow me to see it when I think it played briefly at our drive-in. But later on, with my good friend Roberta, I got to see Night of the Living Dead, and if I remember right, it was on a double bill with The Exorcist, if I recall that. And Night of the Living Dead, of course, was an utterly fantastic horror film. It's my favorite horror film of all time. But as far as the Dead films in order, they are Night, Dawn, and Day. I love, and I'm probably one of the only people that actually liked Diary of the Dead. I thought Diary of the Dead is one of the best camcorder films I've ever seen. I think George knocked it out of the park, but that's just me, because I have friends that will say, the only reason you like Diary of the Dead is because you're such a fan of George A. Romero's movies. Well, no, it's not true. Diary of the Dead was excellent, and I think it was underrated in George's arsenal of wonderful zombie films that he did. Anyway, my background with George is really very simple. I was very privileged to be asked to write and direct the official documentary commemorating the 25th anniversary of Night of the Living Dead. And along with my friend who produced and co-edited the film, J.R. Bookwalter, we did that. And then later it became the Reflections on the Living Dead in an absolutely wonderful Blu-ray that J.R. put together that I'm very, very proud of. And as a fan, forget the fact that I had something to do with it. As a fan, I think it's one of the coolest George A. Romero commemorative pieces ever. He's got so much packed on that Blu-ray. So if you haven't received it yet, trust me, you want it. Or if you don't know anything about it, and if you're a Day of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead Romero fan, trust me, you want it. There's just so many cool things on there. So let's move to Day of the Dead. So in 1984, while I was working as a house parent in Ohio, I got a phone call from, I believe her name was Felice Salami. And I thought it was a joke. I honestly thought this was a joke. And this was during the time when I was a film critic and I was starting to get quoted for horror films. I was a very small-time film critic, but nevertheless, my blurbs got seen. And I got a call from Felice Salami. Again, I thought this was a joke, asking me if I wanted to be in Day of the Dead. And I hung up on her. I thought for sure it was one of my friends. Now, if she had not called me back, I would never have had that incredible experience in my life, because when she called me back, I quizzed her as to, well, if you are who you say you are and representing who you say you are representing, then what was George's second film? I thought only a true George Romero fan would know what that film was. And at the time, There's Always Vanilla was not available. You couldn't find it even on VHS that I know of, legally anyway. So obviously, being a George Romero fan, I wanted to see that really bad. So she basically pauses on the line, comes back and says, "There's Always Vanilla." And I went, "Oh crap, this is for real. You really are who you say you are." And I apologized to her, and she was very, very nice, very, laughed at, how I responded to her the first time. But George had seen some of my reviews, and I think that's why, and they were very complimentary to George at the time. I think that's why I was invited to do and be in Day of the Dead. So Day of the Dead, my involvement in Day of the Dead is a crazy story. And the first part of it is I had a hard time getting anyone to drive me, because I didn't drive, to, at the time, it was near Monroeville, and for that particular scene, which was the elevator scene. And I remember, just to give people an idea of what that experience was like, who were not part of Day of the Dead, and maybe never even discovered it till many years later. My friend at the time, Tom May, was not a George A. Romero fan, but he was a friend, and he drove me there. We ate at the Hardee's restaurant at the bottom of the hill before you get close to the Manor Nike missile site. And I remember the butterflies in my stomach were gigantic in 1984. I believe it was October of 84. And So one of the things that Felice told me as we're driving up the road, we were to look for signs in the woods. It was not apparent that you were coming close to the set of Day of the Dead. You had to look to the woods, if I remember right, to your right, and you would see hint signs on trees, and they were in very brightly colored, like posters. So you would drive a little bit, you'd see of, you drive a little bit, you'd see the, drive a little bit, you'd see George, and you knew then these were hints to George A. Romero's production on Day of the Dead. And we got to the top of the hill. There was a big fence. It was open. We went in, and I remember the first thing that I saw was a trailer full of fire extinguishers. Now, if I'm a little bit wrong about some of this, I apologize. It's been quite a few years. But I remember looking into a trailer or a small building where there were fire extinguishers and they were full of blood. And I looked at my friend Tom and said, "This is so surreal, man. I cannot believe I am so lucky to be here." And yet I was a nervous wreck. I knew if I got a peek of George or Michael Gornick or Tom Savini, I was going to probably be like some idiot fan falling to the ground and, saying I'm not worthy. I'm not one of those kind of people that would do that. That would be embarrassing to me and probably embarrassing to them, because those people are very humble. If you've never had a chance to meet George or Mike or Tom, trust me, they are very humble people and really nice people. I will say that unequivocally. So, but it was a weird experience because basically we went to this tent and we got into our costumes, and mine was a black suit with a white ruffled shirt and black slacks, and it fit me. I gave them my measurements before we left, and everything fit me. And it was a very dirty suit. It had been, obviously it wasn't real dirt. It was makeup. So they took us to a trailer, if I remember right, and it was a big trailer. And we sat there all morning, and I was wearing this incredibly tight, intense fitting mask. It was one of the zombie masks that Tom and his group had created. And that mask stuck to my face and hurt my face, burned my face. And I sat in that trailer. I think we were there for probably 6 hours at least, just sitting there. And all around me was people talking. And if I remember right, some of those people became rather famous years later and made their own, feature films. A lot of filmmakers are in fact fans of George A. Romero and of course Night, Dawn, Day and on from there. And his other films too, Creepshow, Night Riders, Martin, all that stuff. So we were there about 6 hours, and then finally they come and get us. I remember food-wise, I think there was a bucket of fried chicken in that trailer. I don't remember, and there was soda. I don't remember beyond that. They took us out to a field, and of course, I got a glimpse of George in his scarf, and my stomach went to jello when I saw him. He's a great big teddy bear kind of guy, like your uncle, like a big truck driver uncle, He was smiling, and they put us on the elevator. And this was a real elevator. This was not a fake one. It was a real elevator, and I was to learn later that at one time there was ICBM missiles that would be launched in case of a nuclear war from that particular elevator. And I was lucky enough, very lucky, to be selected by, I think it was Tom Savini, to be on the elevator, probably because my black and white outfit would help set white balance. I don't know, but I was lucky to be on that elevator, while my friend Tom, he stayed on the top looking down. So we filmed, I remember, for about 2 hours, and I remember the first time the elevator went down, the first person I saw was George, and I remember him wearing a flannel shirt, the scarf, his lucky scarf hanging from the side, big grin on his face, very professional, but very friendly. And we would go down, and I'm thinking, all I want to do is get off this elevator and go shake that man's hands. But, there was filming to be done. We went up and down, I think, a couple of times, and then there was going to be the scene where, if I remember right, the zombies would get off the elevator, and the first guy had if I remember right, a football helmet on or something, and he falls onto the elevator, and then we all sort of come behind him. And if you look at the film, you will see a rude, large zombie wearing a tight-fitting mask. You have to look carefully, pushing his way through the zombies in order to get in the front. The reason I did that is because I wanted in the shot. So I thought, you guys can stay back. I'm moving forward as fast as I can go. And I did. So all you see, of course, is that mask. And we were told, thank you, congratulations, and we were done. And I thought, you've got to be kidding me. all this way, all this way, and all I got to do was ride an elevator. But, at the time, I didn't appreciate the fact that that was going to be a pivotal scene. You also have to understand, at the time, we didn't even know anything about the plot of the film. I had no idea about the plot of the film. So at the end, we were given a painter's cap that said I was a zombie in Day of the Dead. Later, I gave that to a little kid who was a fan of monster movies as a gift for his Christmas. I kind of wish I'd hung on to that cap, but it meant a lot to him. And the other thing we got was a dollar bill. We didn't have to get paid, but we got paid as an extra. So you can officially say I was a paid zombie in Day of the Dead. And I didn't see the autograph. So my friend Tom and I, on the way back to Ohio, stopped at a McDonald's. No, actually, no, we didn't. We ate in the Monroeville Mall and took a little tour of Monroeville Mall, which at the time, I could see some things that were from Dawn of the Dead, but I didn't get to see all of them. I just sort of walked around. Tom was not really interested in being there too long. So we ate at the Brown Derby, if I remember, and I spent that dollar, not knowing that George's autograph was on it. That would have been priceless. And somebody out there, somewhere in 1984 in the fall, got that dollar, and I hope you enjoy it. So that's part one of my Day of the Dead experience. Upcoming is part two, when I got into a much better, more pivotal, and more memorable scene. Thanks for listening.